Hello, huge movie fanatic Nate coming at you on a glorious spring day. It is now May 2016. The first Friday of May, I think it was the 6th, came out, of course, Marvel's first movie of the year. Is it the first of two? I don't know, I'm not a huge follower, but Marvel's first movie of the year, the third Captain America movie, Captain America Civil War, came out, and I've said before, maybe on both of the Captain America, me and Matt have reviewed the first one, I reviewed the second one, and now I'm going to review the third one. I think on the other two reviews I said that, Captain America is my favorite Avenger because he comes from that era that I love so much, like the 40s and stuff like that. Not that I have any affinity or love for America or military, it's kind of the opposite. I do, however, love that era in North America of the 40s, 20s, 30s, 40s, and Art Deco and all that music, big band stuff and stuff like that. So that's a huge reason, primarily why Captain America is my favorite Avenger. So obviously, I probably wouldn't have seen this if it wasn't at the drive-in. We did happen to catch it at the drive-in on opening day, or opening night rather, and I wouldn't have rushed out to the theater to see it had it not been at the drive-in. I'll see things at the drive-in sooner, than I would at a normal theater. I obviously intended to see this at some point, but as it turns out, we saw it opening day, opening night at the drive-in. So I'm here to review. I'm going to do my best. Drive-ins can be kind of distracting, so I'm going to do my best to try to recollect, having only seen it once, this movie. So what ends up happening, I'm not going to spoil like the huge things about this, but I'll spoil, this is probably more, you can more or less probably call this a spoiler-laden review. There is one thing, one huge point which I'm not going to spoil, but so at the end of Captain America 2, of course, Bucky, kind of drags Captain America from the water or whatever on the shore and walks away, which indicates, obviously, some kind of, well, I think other times throughout the movie or whatever, he had this brief, remembrances of his past. So what turns out with this movie is, of course, that continues. This is the first time we've seen Bucky, I believe, since Captain America 2. As far as I know, or at least in the Marvel movies that I've seen. So, that trend continues where it's like Bucky, very much, I've seen this in movies before too, where there's a series of like words that, snap someone into like a, Manchurian Candidate, just zombie or order follower, mode. And, this movie's the same way where, back when Bucky was saved by whoever, I'm not good with details in one viewing of a movie, especially at a drive-in when it's late. So, back when Bucky was saved by, I don't know if it was Russians or some shit, regardless, he was programmed with all these, words to activate him in this, winter soldier mode, if you will. So this movie sees, Bucky returning, I can't remember how or why. Maybe no one said the words for a couple of weeks and he, he reverted back to his normal Bucky Barnes self. But this movie sees, the return of, it kind of makes the lame, what I've thought the lame, making Bucky the bad guy in the second one. It kind of, I don't know, I guess it was kind of nice to see him come out of it and him fighting along. I'm really going over, I'm going to try to cut this shorter, fighting alongside and reminiscing with Captain, Steve Rogers again was kind of cool because, as I said in my review of Captain America: The First Avenger, I thought that, when me and Matt reviewed it, I thought that Bucky died, or quote unquote, because at the time we thought he died. I thought he died way too soon in the movie and whatever and stuff, so it was cool to have, Bucky back fighting alongside Captain America. So, anyway, this movie, I was thinking was kind of lame up until, oh gosh, how do I do this? Okay. Black Widow hand-to-hand combat. I mean, what have they, not, it's just like, this movie seemed like the majority of the action was these, just what I would regard, this is only after seeing, maybe if I saw it a second time I would feel differently. Again, I have to stress that, I saw this rather late at night at a drive-in, which is a very distracting environment when you have the windows open and stuff. So, and plus being just an old grumpy bastard and being on, whatever you call it, superhero overload. you know, keep that in mind as I rant and bitch on about things I don't like about this movie, which are just the majority of the action scenes, like the first, you know, certainly the first one, maybe the first couple action scenes is just like all this, you know, hand-to-hand combat. Seems like the majority of like the first half of the movie action was just like hand-to-hand combat. Of course, Black Widow, hand-to-hand combat. Very much with like, you know, Avengers 2 last year. I did kind of like it, you know, after the first action sequence, how we have this plenty of breathing room in this whole thing, where I did like the thing where this was what begins to divide the Avengers. Incidentally, it's very interesting to see like pretty much all the Avengers except what, just Hulk and Thor in a non-Avengers movie was kind of cool. That was a really cool touch. And so this is almost, you know, this almost could be called Avengers 3 to a certain extent, just minus, you know, 2. I don't really care so much about Thor, and, you know, I guess I like Hulk more than Thor, but so, you know, one of the things I liked at the beginning of the movie, you know, after the first action sequence was, you know, the whole thing, which is something that I took into consideration ever since these movies started, where, you know, every movie, you know, ends with this, well, the Avengers ones anyway, ends with like the destruction of a whole city, and obviously there's going to be all kinds of, you know, civilians dying and all this shit, and somehow they end all jokey and happy and shit, and don't take into consideration. This happens with just, you know, disaster movies or whatever, you know, where, you know, arguably thousands and thousands of people died, pardon me, but you have this, you know, the main characters are safe and together and smiling, and it's like this happy ending with American flags always and shit, like San Andreas and crap. And one thing this movie does, and to its credit, is actually as a part of the whole plot point of you know, dividing the Avengers, as it were, is, you know, they have a character's mother, you know, who shows up at one of Tony Stark's events or whatever, and, you know, really shines a light on, you know, the effect that their, you know, big Avenger battles have on, you know, just the ordinary populace and stuff, which I thought was, you know, just, of course, I thought it was not, I didn't know it was going to turn into the plot point, and again, so many times in movies things happen, and it's just like, oh, that's kind of cool. I'm glad they did that, and it turns out to be like, I've said this before in reviews, that it'd be cool if a movie just did something for the sake of doing it and not doing it just for a major plot point. I can't remember what I cited in the past or what movies or instances, but, you know, I was like, oh, that's really cool, but it's, you know, then I think it's lamer when they turn that into, you know, a big plot point. So which gets Tony thinking very much like he did in the very first Iron Man movie about, you know, rethinking what he's been doing, and it shouldn't take someone who's as smart as him to even have to start engaging in these deadly, you know, civilian killing, you know, parties to even start to realize this. You should realize it before you even, you know, fly away in the suit, but whatever, I guess he's not as smart as we're led to believe. That, in fact, you know, the big Avengers parties do have, you know, take a toll on the civilian. Not that frickin' anyone, you know, in power cares about civilian casualties, but they nevertheless use it in this movie as the dividing point, or one of the dividing points that kind of, you know, Tony Stark kind of feels like, yeah, we should have rules and some shit. Of course, you know, who's, you know, and I think that like I say, I'm not good with details on a first viewing. But, you know, United Nations was mentioned, which is, of course, in reality just a bunch of, you know, bullshit and, you know, more and more, further step towards, you know, world government, but that's another story. United Nations was, you know, it's funny how they, you know, they're like, yeah, we need rules, and it's the big, of course, the big choice, or the big question is, well, who's the rules, you know, like, who polices the heroes? It's just like, you know, it's the endless question of who's the ultimate authority, and by what authority are you granted authority, and all these kind of whatever, you know. Long story short, this movie, and it was kind of like how they're gonna get divided, and it was kind of realistic. And as I've said so many times, and I think both of the Captain America movie reviews, is pretty much everything Steve Rogers says I agree with, and I actually was on his side. For the record, if you wondered, you know, the Avengers were split down the middle in this movie. I was definitely, you know, on Captain America's side because, you know, becoming a part of the big picture in terms of, fricking United Nations and all this fraudulent bullshit is definitely not the answer. And when Captain America said things to that effect and signing over, whatever he said, signing over rights to act on your own or whatever the hell, Captain America was against, and when he didn't sign and was against it, I was like, yeah, man, that's exactly the camp I would have been in as well, because we need to be our own people and not a part of this, worldwide bureaucratic bullshit mentality. So, long story short, I was definitely in Captain America's camp on that issue. So go Cap. So I found the action scenes, that led up. I think there was, I don't know if it was 2 or 3 that preceded like the Avengers battling each other thing to be a little just kind of roll your eyes ish. And then one of the things, continuing with what I didn't really like about this movie, the movie just stops. I'd be interested to know what Matt thinks about this, my fellow reviewer who pops around once a year, every now and then if we're lucky. I'd be interested in what Matt thinks about the part of the movie that just stops dead in its tracks for what seems like 15 or 20 minutes when Tony Stark goes to recruit Peter Parker and this absolutely, I hate this kid, this new kid who they got to play, Peter Parker for this and obviously movies to come, and probably his own Spider-Man or whatever, and hopefully not a third origin story. I thought it was just like they just blindly picked any kid from Queens with that accent and just like, okay, you do it, So, although, I do kind of like the Spider-Man eyes for the very first time in a movie do what I think they used to do in the comics or cartoons or whatever, which is not really realistic in the real world, but it's kind of cool to see that happen. At any case, I thought that this movie loses huge stars for that just one scene, which seemed like at least minimum 15 minutes, where he just, Iron Man just goes to, recruit Peter Parker, oh my gosh. So, then of course we have the inevitable, the movie's just humdrum for a while, and then you have the inevitable recruiting of, and even Ant-Man, which I thought was cool. I have no problem with Ant-Man being in the movie, but Spider-Man felt very forced in like having not been a part of the Marvel universe, like in as far as the movies go. I just thought Spider-Man was forced. I felt like that was forced, and obviously Ant-Man having had his own movie last year was not forced, seeing as how he was already introduced in his own movie. I didn't like the redesign of the mask. I thought it was perfect in the first movie, in the movie, an Ant-Man movie, and now the redesign of the mask almost looked like a Saturday Night Live just, comic goofball skit of it or something like that. But Ant-Man's, inclusion in the movie was fantastic, and overall I thought how they had all, so many of the like Avengers characters with the black guy, what is it, War Machine, or was it Iron Patriot, and the other guy was it the Falcon, and I did feel like they, and even who I thought wouldn't make an appearance ended up showing up later, and the Hawkeye or whatever and stuff like that, and cool, so the movie started, when they actually did their little, which turned out to be more of a playful battle, and then whatever the hell it was, an airport or wherever it was, I thought that, I actually liked that scene, the action scene with the Avengers fighting each other in a more playful tone, as it turns out. And I thought that was the last kind of the action scene of the last action scene of the movie and stuff like that, and having Ant-Man get huge, like, Ultraman was really unexpected, cool, kind of funny idea and really cool. It would have, they didn't, I think he mentioned something like he passed out after he did it before. I don't think they showed him like, shrink and then pass out, but that would have been funny. But, and I thought that would be the end of the movie, and that, like I said, that was kind of a playful battle, and what the thing that I kind of like, and pardon me, don't like at the same time, is what happens after, when I felt like, okay, I was kind of, done with the movie at that point, at the end of that big slam bang Avengers versus each other battle, and of course, with Mr. What's-His-Name, Iron Patriot getting wounded and stuff. Oh, that's gonna happen when you engage in battle. Oh. But anyway, I got to wrap up this review. So one thing I liked and didn't like at the same time, it kind of made it pretty hardcore, was the thing that I'm not going to spoil, but the very important plot point regarding Tony Stark's parents and stuff like that, and Bucky will just say regarding their past history, came to light at the very end of the movie, which I thought they were just, after that last action sequence where they were all fighting each other, I thought they were just setting up an open end for the next movie or whatever, and it turns out that the movie's still got like 20 minutes left to go, or 25, and I'm like, whatever. So at any rate, long story short, I do kind of like the what they ended up happening at the very end of the movie, where that was revealed, and it's like Bucky and Captain America versus Iron Man in this very heated, because of the information revealed, in a very heated, it went from playful battle to more like, when you're just punching around with your friends in the playground, and they say something that was just like, oh my, did you just say that, motherfucker? And it's just like you really start to go hardcore. That's what happened. Not that I've ever done that, but I can imagine that happens. So anyway, in any case, the movie ends with this relatively like high stakes, like hardcore battle between, I guess, well, it's really not the Avengers, it's two Avengers plus, Winter Soldier or whatever. But anyway, I do think that last, three-way or two-on-one or battle or whatever the hell it was, did kind of save the movie from what I thought was mostly mediocre beginning and middle. I thought that kind of really ended up, as a matter of fact, sitting here talking about it, my star went up from a quarter point. So I am at the end of the day going to give Captain America Civil War 2.5 stars, which was actually 2 1/4 stars before I started this review. It might seem low, and then it's low because the movie I felt was 15-20 minutes too long. I felt that the inclusion of Spider-Man was way forced. I felt that, although I kind of like the reasoning for the three-way battle at the end, I kind of think it was kind of contrived and lame at the same time. Obviously, having the Captain America character be created a lot more. I don't know when the Iron Man character was created, if that was the 60s or something like that, or even the 70s, I don't know. But I obviously they're probably, I'm not a comic book person, but I imagine they're taking license and not following actual origin story or actual whatever. But anyway, I did think that was kind of cool and lame at the same time. Ultimately, the majority of the movie, except for the last half, I felt was very kind of mediocre and whatever and stuff. And I'll definitely buy it if I love it. I thought it was mediocre. I'll definitely buy it. But what I was going to say is I'm sure this will be on release day. It'll be $20 3D Blu-ray. So if that's the case, I'll definitely buy the 3D Blu-ray. I'll buy it anyway because I like Captain America. And I liked this more. I can't remember how many stars I gave Captain America Winter Soldier, but I liked this more than that because, like I said before, this is almost like Avengers 3. It features the majority of the Avengers, which is very cool to see. Iron Man and, whatever, Black Widow, although she was in Captain America 2 as well. But so many of, like, the Avengers, and also that chick we were introduced to in Avengers 2, pretty sexy girl from Godzilla or whatever, who does all this stuff. And not only that, but Jennifer Connelly's husband, as the guy who's been in the sun too long. I can't remember what the hell his name is, Jarvis in the Flesh. So, I mean, there's so many characters in this movie. Oh, Black Panther. I thought that was goofy too. But there's so many characters in this movie that I do feel they pretty successfully balanced so many of these characters. Almost felt like the most characters ever in a Marvel movie to this point, even more than Avengers movies. I don't know if I'm correct in thinking that, but just sitting here talking about the movie, seems like there's a lot of characters in this movie. So I think we'll leave it at that. I probably already went way too long. I was just going to say a little bit about it and bitch for a while, but talking about it, I just got talking about it. So that's my review of Captain America Civil War. Yeah, it's always great to see Captain America back, as I do love Chris Evans. I thought, he was perfectly cast as this character, and like I said before, in other Captain America and Avengers reviews, like they got just the character of Steve Rogers in these movies just dead on every single time, and just his ultimate, whatever, in my opinion, just steadfast, straight, straight and true. Just like I pretty much agree, I agree with like everything he says. He's just like, this the steadfast, true, whatever. Always on the right course, in my opinion, Captain America, Steve Rogers. So, whoop-de-doo. Thank you very much for watching this review, and especially people who are still watching, thank you very much for watching this whole thing. And before it goes on any longer, I'll end it right now and say, catch you next time.